The following segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. We had an awesome interview on our Sunday show. If you're not a subscriber already, definitely go sign up so you can check this interview out, because I've had a lot of you say, Brandi, you need to talk more about issues related to public education and the state of our public schools. And there is a mom named Alesha Perkins who has already sent 2 kids through the Olympia school district. She has another, her daughter's a senior. Her and her husband both graduated from the Olympia school district, and they have seen it, especially in the past few years, really transform from a place focused on learning and educating kids to a place where there is a big segment of the teachers there who are trying to push a political and social agenda on their students. And Alesha Perkins, the first time she really started to speak up about it is when a woman named Talana Reed was appointed to the school board. Now that name might sound familiar because it was very controversial, because there were clips of her outside the state capitol, I believe it was, calling cops pigs and talking about property destruction. Listen.
And it amazes me how those pigs can sit over there to watch us peacefully talk about what we want changed in this state. It amazes me. And they don't pay attention until we tear shit up. So just before I get started, tear everything up in this fucking city until they do what we want them to do.
So Alesha Perkins saw that. Reasonable mom, reasonable person, reasonable parent, and thought, hey, I don't want someone who calls cops pigs and who encourages property destruction to be on the school board in charge of decisions for my child's education. You know, she brought it up to the school board and the school, other parents did, and they got nowhere. And then things just continued on from there. You know, we talked about a story in the Olympia school district where they created these safe spaces for BIPOC students away from white students. Like these little clubs for grade schoolers where, depending on the color of your skin, you were either allowed or not allowed. And there was also, and I think this to me is one of the most wild ones so far out of the Olympia school district, where they were facing some budgetary decisions. And they decided to cut 4th grade band and wind instruments, in part because it contributes to an environment of white supremacy. Listen.
There are other folks in the community that experience things like a tradition of excellence as exclusionary. And I don't think that there's just 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 people that think that. But that's not unique to elementary instrumental music. We're a school district that lives in, is an entrenched in, and is surrounded by white supremacy culture. And that's a real thing. And there's nothing about string or wind instrumental music that is intrinsically white supremacist. However, the ways in which it is, and the ways in which all of our institutions, not just schools, but local government, state government, our churches, our neighborhoods, inculcate and allow white supremacy culture to continue to be propagated and cause significant institutional violence, are things that we have to think about carefully as a community.
Like, again, that's a school board meeting where they're talking about budget cuts and they're talking about 4th grade band and wind instruments. And they got to listen to that tirade from the school board. This isn't about black and white. It's not even about, conservative values versus progressive values. It's about common sense. It's about reasonable versus unreasonable. And so Alesha Perkins, as a mom, has really spoken up and put herself out there. And on Sundays with Subscribers, we talked to her about how scary that can be, but also about her belief that reasonable parents really need to get involved to stop this from happening. As a white parent who raised concerns about, the principles of Black Lives Matter being taught to students, were you concerned about what that could mean for you or for your child?
I was not, but sometimes I think there's something wrong with me because I'm not overly concerned about what people say. I just the way that I've approached things is to just present the facts. So when I showed people these are the 13 principles, I'm unclear what this has to do with Black History Month at all. This is really a belief system that most people don't subscribe to, from an organization that has been roundly discredited, in my opinion, objectively.
Yeah.
Why is this now being pushed on these children in elementary school and up? I have been called, racist and things like that, but I have yet to see anyone coming back on the facts. So that's kind of just where I left it, and I don't really respond.
What kind of struggle is it for parents right now, seeing some of these issues with the public education system? What kind of challenges exist when deciding how do we move forward with our kids' education?
I think that the parents who have the means are moving on. So the way I've kind of started to look at it is that our district may turn into more of a niche district that kind of like an evergreen state college where they've decided that they're going to go down this road. And if you don't like it, you can make another choice. And so what I'm seeing is literally hundreds of parents have left the district and they're making another choice. So it's almost like a business where you're offering a product. When the quality of that product is not what you want, you seek another product. Unfortunately, the people who are able to do that usually have the means. And, to homeschool, that usually means you have one parent at home. To do private school, that means you have the means to pay for private school in addition to the taxes that you're already paying for public school. So it's becoming a difficult choice, and I think it's going to be dangerous with what we're left with if we don't get back to a public education system where most people want to put their child.
Yeah, and I'm curious what impact you think this is going to have on kids, because your kids are all close to adulthood, if not already adults. But for instance, there was a story out of the Olympia School District where they're talking about the white supremacy that exists in like 5th grade band or something like that. Like we're talking craziness.
Right.
And I played that rant for our viewers, and I just could not believe that it was real. And so, and then there was the other story that had to do with, like, again, for grade schoolers, like segregated groups for BIPOC students only, like no white students allowed. So when you have these younger kids that are basically, that's their whole experience in public education to this point, what impact do you think that is going to have on them?
Well, so when I found out about the BIPOC clubs, which was fairly early on, before it even went out into the news media, I was hearing from parents who were actually in some of those classes, who had students in these classes, and they said, my child is coming home and saying, am I BIPOC? Am I allowed to go to this? And the answer is no, you're white, so you can't go to this. And what it made me think of is my brother, who is biracial. And had I been in school during all of this, my brother would have essentially been told that his own sister was unsafe, because that's the rhetoric that they use.
They're saying they're safe spaces.
Safe spaces from me, who is white. So I would essentially be separated from my brother. And I just am so thankful that this was not happening when we were growing up, because and then what do kids do that are biracial? I hear from a lot of families who have a mixed race couple with a biracial child that are really stuck in the middle of all of this racial stuff.
Yeah, and if you want to check that interview out, you can visit undividedpod.com. That's undividedpod.com to watch the full thing on Sundays with subscribers. But I just thought it's such an important conversation, because what I really value about Alesha is the way she's so matter of fact. She's not a bomb thrower. And she's talking again about reasonable versus unreasonable. This isn't about acting like racism doesn't exist. It's about not furthering divisions with our kids in school before they're even old enough to think about, the differences between black and white. And some of these things, it just goes back to plain common sense. Why would we have clubs for kids based on the color of their skin? why would we suggest that something as innocent as fourth grade band is somehow perpetuating a culture of white supremacy because it's encouraging kids to reach for excellence? And so, like Alesha talks about in our interview, it is, the schools are such an important place for reasonable parents, grandparents, even to be involved, to run for school boards, even though it might be a scary proposition. And I love Alesha saying, well, I guess I'm just weird because I really don't care what people have to say about me, because she's talking about race as a white mom at a very difficult time to have a conversation about that issue. So I hope she can be an example. I hope she can be an inspiration to other parents who hear about these things and they're fed up, but they haven't kind of taken the next step to actually get involved in bringing attention to these issues and maybe getting directly involved in their child's school. So loved Alesha. We'll definitely have her back on the show. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure to sign up for their newsletter.